Hello there, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. I am your host, Rich Owens, and joining me this week, we've got 2/3 of the FM team. We have got the United City FM Kev, and fresh from his recent 2-week stint trapped down a well, it's Callum. Callum,
out of the well.
He's out of the well. He's back on podcast. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, thank you. I'm great. I was shocked to know so many people knew about the well, actually. And I've had a lot of questions over the last 2 weeks. How have I been streaming from the well? Luckily, good Wi-Fi in the well, so that worked out nicely. I wasn't aware of how I got into the well. I was just sort of hanging around a well as you do. However, if you haven't seen Kev's Twitter, we're starting to get to the bottom of how I got into the well. Very intriguing. So I'm not going to say any more on that, but you'll have to head over to the United City FM's Twitter. But other than that, I'm great, thank you. I'm really good. It's I've got a week left of my summer holidays, so summer Callum is coming to the end. But yeah, really, really good. Thanks, Rich.
Good, mate. It's a pleasure to have you back. I'm glad you managed to get out. Don't even want to know how you got out, if I'm honest with you.
It's probably best not
to say that. I say that I actually know, and it was amazing. But I'm not going to tell you how. No, nobody will ever know. Had to be there. Kev, you are back as well after a little week off last week. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, thank you. All the physical comedy going back and forth for the audio listeners, it's fine. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing great. In terms of Callum getting out of the well, think the third of the Christian Bale Batman trilogy. There's some stuff in there that might help you figure out how he got back out. But yeah, I'm doing really good, thank you. I had a really busy weekend last week. Lots of family things going on and other bits, and it just had to give. Unfortunately, it was this. But I missed you guys, and I'm really glad to be back. And we've had a lovely chat for the last hour or so leading up to recording a podcast. So let's see if we can rediscover the magic now that we've pressed record, eh? But yeah, really, really good to be here. How you doing, Rich? How's you?
I'm brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Like Callum, I've got a week left of my summer holidays, but there's been no summer Rich. There's been a lot of Daddy Rich at home doing all of the child wrangling. So I'm at the point now, because Callum and I both work in education in some capacity. I'm at the point now where I'm very much ready to start looking after other people's children again. So, I love mine in a way, but 5 weeks is a long time. 6 weeks, some might say, is 1 week too many. Not me though, not me. It's been lovely, but I'm really glad you're both back. I've missed you both terribly, because if anything, I couldn't think of a nicer audience, because it's as we do in these circumstances, we like to start our podcast with a little stream update as to what we've all been doing with our stream saves and our content and community creation endeavors. And lads, really, really sorry, but this week it's my turn.
Oh, no, don't be sorry. I'm glad it's not me this week. We might talk about that a little later on, but I'm really glad it's you. Go for it, Rich. Tell us all about your adventures.
Thank you, because, but spoiler, there's a theme to a lot of this week's podcast. This opening section is the complete opposite of it, but as the podcast goes on, a lot more on brand, you could make the argument. What have I been up to? My adventures. I've been having a lovely time over in that Scandinavia. I'm doing my Scandinavian Triple Crown Challenge. Of course, the aim of my save is to win the top league titles in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, specifically in that order. Can't skip countries, can't go backwards, not allowed to do anything like that. It's not as strict as Kev's Homeward Bound, but there are rules, and I'm going to adhere to them. I think last time we talked, I think I was still in my first season in Sweden. It's been a hot minute. I had a job with AIK over in Sweden. I took them over. They were, the day before I took the job, they were in the relegation zone. And then they won a game the day before I accepted the contract. So they just about lifted themselves out of the relegation zone. I played a few games, won a few games. Season was going okay. So that was season 3 of the save. Season 3, we were sat there, we were looking at the team, we were thinking to ourselves, well, what, this team's got a chance in a season or two's time. There's no way we're going to do it this year. But the core of the squad was really, really good. I had an aging John Guidetti, Manchester City legend John Guidetti, who for some reason was just scoring goal after goal after goal. We had a 6'8" 8 Swedish goalkeeper called Samuel Brolin, who was absolutely fantastic. I was like, just between the two of them, this team has a chance. And as it turns out, fellas, the team had a chance that season because AIK just kept winning games. They kept winning games, and they kept winning games, and they kept winning games, grinding out results, result after result after result. I think when we took over, I think we were something like a 12 or maybe 13 points behind Malmo, who were top of the league that season. Malmo started to drop off. AIK started to get really, really, really good. And as the season went on, that gap was closing and closing and closing, getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And with about 8 games to go, myself and also chap starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could do it in one season because we were the informed team. Everything was going absolutely fantastically. And then I opened my big mouth. I did the thing. You know, when you have those little thoughts in the back of your head, is like, oh, well, but what happens if one of our key players gets injured? What happens if somebody gets sold? Never say them out loud.
Never say them, Rich.
Never say it out loud.
Never say them.
Everything is hypothetical. Everything is hypothetical in these scenarios. I was like, hey, this is going really well. None of my players have been swept out from under my feet by boards accepting stupid bids. None of my key players have been injured. And then 3 of my key players got injured. And then my star goalkeeper, Samuel Brolin, I just completely missed the fact that he had a £1.6 million release clause in his contract. And RB Salzburg just swept in and just stole him off me. And my backup goalkeeper was not very good. He had a terrible goalkeeping affliction. Our friend Jeb refers to as Dorito mitts, where his wrists are just made of like corn chips and they can't really save shots. The injuries, the loss of our star goalkeeper meant that we'd gone from sprinting over the finish line to kind of, crawling over the finish line. And then by the time we made it to the end of the season, literally dragging ourselves by our fingernails over the finish line because we were competitive, we were still winning games. And then we went as far as we could. We ended up finishing second in our first season, which was devastating because I convinced myself we were going to win the league, one and done, from relegation zone to league champions in one season. They'd have built a statue of me and I would have left with my head held high. But it wasn't to be season 1 in Sweden. And we thought, well, we go again. Season number 2, AIK have a relatively sensible transfer budget. I think it's around £4 million, which is quite a lot for Sweden. Not compared to other big European leagues, but in Sweden, it is more than enough to be competitive with. And we identified the issues that were the fact that we were just, we were scoring goals, but we were also a little bit leaky at the back. So we shored up the defence, brought in some brand new defenders, brought in a reserve centre back from Wolves, who was absolutely fantastic. We brought in a reserve right back from Man City's under 21s, who was absolutely fantastic. And then we also signed a brand new striker, who just turned into Erling Haaland. For 1 year and 1 year only, he turned into Haaland. It was absolutely fantastic. We went in season 2 in Sweden, season 4 of the Save, and we carried on our form from the previous season. We estimated that there are 30 games in Sweden, and of those 30 games, you need to finish with a roughly 60 points to win the league. We'd gone back, looked at the previous league totals. 60 points was the target. I think we finished on 65. Malmo were taken out. There's lots of other good Swedish teams like Djurgården. They were there or thereabouts. One of the nice things about the Swedish league is that there isn't necessarily a particularly dominant team. Sweden, one of 5 or 6, has a chance every single year. And season 4, it was AIK's time. We absolutely smashed the league. We finished on 65 points, took out Malmo. We did incredibly well. We had a good Swedish Cup run. We had a very, very good Europa Conference run. We finished top of the group, 6 from 6 in our qualifying stage in the group. So we finished top of the Europa League conference group, which was incredible. I was half tempted to carry on because the Swedish league happens at a very, very strange time. So when the season finishes in Sweden, kind of halfway through the rest of like the bigger European leagues seasons. So chap, I think you should stay and have a crack at the Europa because you've done well. You've got out. You've finished top of the Conference League group. Why not give it a go? And I went, no. I've you know what? I've done all I needed to do. The objective was win the league. I'm not here for European glory, as nice as it would be, but that's not who I am. That's not who I am as a person. So I respectfully resigned from my position at AIK. And then I thought, right, it's on to Denmark, the final chapter of the save. And then, unbeknownst to me, I then had to fight the final boss of Football Manager 23. Because do you know how long it took me to get a job in Denmark after winning the league? And bearing in mind, I've won the league in Norway. I've done a Norwegian League and Cup double. I've won the league in Sweden. I've smashed the Europa Conference League groups. I left my job at the end of the 40.
Surely they snapped you up.
Yeah, immediately.
Snapped me up. Yes, immediately. Immediately. The longest 2 3/4 hours on stream of my life. It took 2 full in-game years. It was obscene. Nobody got sacked in Denmark for 18 months. Like, honestly, Kev, we had this conversation on pod a few weeks ago when we were doing our Premier League predictions.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
How lovely would it be in a universe where nobody gets sacked, everyone keeps their job for the whole season? In real life, it would be an absolute treat. In the context of my Football Manager 23 save, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. 2 years of just sitting there, twiddling your thumbs, just waiting. We were sat there, holiday for 2 or 3 months, holiday for 2 or 3 months. And it always flashed up, these are the jobs that are in danger. These are the jobs that are at risk. And I'm sat there and I'm like, right, there are 2 or 3 jobs in Denmark that we would love. Jobs like the Norseland job, the Michelin job. We've talked quite a lot about FC Copenhagen on the saves as well. They are, I mean, we joke that, you know, the 2-year wait was the final boss. Getting the job in Denmark was the final boss. Now it's FC Copenhagen. They are the most dominant team in that league by such a distance. I mean, Kevin, you've spent a bit of time in Scandinavia on previous M's. You know, you've experienced them firsthand.
I really do. And I had a similar issue that I had to wait a season and a half in my current save to get into Hungary. In my save, just waiting for anybody of a decent standard to get a shift of manager. So yeah, it's can be soul destroying.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. Just sat there, just waiting, because when you're holidaying, as I say, you can see the list of available jobs and you see the list of jobs at risk always popping up at the top of the screen, and there wasn't a single Danish job for the first year, not even in the at-risk category. And we're always going back, we're checking the league table, and some of the bigger teams were struggling at one point. I think we were looking at teams like Brøndby, Midtjylland at one point were looking like, because the Danish league, if you've never managed there, you play the first kind of, you play 20 odd fixtures, 22 fixtures, then the league splits down the middle. So the top 6 teams go into a Champions group and the bottom 6 teams go into a relegation group. And teams like Midtjylland and Norseland were looking like they were going to be finishing in the relegation group, which is, you know, far and beyond, you know, that's a huge underachievement for them. Think, if you will, Danish Chelsea last season. Massive underachievers, really, really struggling. But even at that point, neither of the jobs became even vaguely at risk. And I'd convinced myself that it just wasn't going to happen. But then we kept on plugging away. Finally, after about 2 hours, the Norseland job becomes available. Just suddenly, out of nowhere, they're like, oh, job's up. I've returned from holiday. It took an extra day. I was like, right, come back. Return from holiday, book a flight, next flight home, EasyJet. We're done. This is the one. This is the team we're desperate for. Because I talked myself into the Norseland job. We get back. I declare interest. I apply for the job. And then the next in-game day, they appointed a new manager. The job was vacant for 3 days. Wow. When have you ever seen a club hire a manager in 3 days on Football Manager? It never happens. I was
Your
quite
wife must
despondent.
have been so angry about cancelling the holiday as well. What holiday was cancelled?
I'd left her and the kids in a caravan in Brill. Which is, I'd say the hardest thing was getting a flight. No airports, no nothing.
Real. Yeah.
I know. I was very. I went James the Giant Peach. I had to lasso about 700 pigeons, and they just flew me. was a whole thing.
And you still didn't get the job.
Still didn't get. I know. You think I was cross. The pigeons.
The pigeons.
Beside themselves. Absolutely beside themselves. But then they staged a coup. It was horrible, and they wouldn't take me home again.
A coup.
Isn't it great? It's pretty hard to imagine.
Oh, the podcast has peaked. That's as good as it'll ever get. That is as good as it'll ever get. Oh, my word.
It's hard to believe that at one point I was legitimately paid money professionally to do stand-up comedy. It's mad. Absolutely mad.
That's amazing.
But the pigeons talked me into, they wouldn't let me lose hope. And we kept on looking, we kept on looking, and we kept on looking. And eventually, a misclick returning from holiday, we looked at the league, and 2 jobs were available. The Brøndby job was available, and the Michelin job was available.
Choices.
And I've never applied for 2 jobs faster. I've never applied for 2 jobs quicker in my entire life. Because at this point, I was like, you know what? It's a job. I'm happy with that, because, as we say, the objective of the save is to try and win the league. So you've got to try and be a little bit competitive. If you're taking over a team that are sat in 12th place, getting relegated with nothing in the club, it's gonna, it's doable, but it's gonna make it harder. You want to, with a club like Copenhagen in the league, you want to be competitive. And both of these clubs, I was like, you know what, we can make this happen. We can do this. 2 very, very nervous job interviews later, I got me a job at Michelin. It took 2 years, 2 bloody years, but we got the Michelin job.
Did you get the offer at Brøndby as well? Did you have a choice to make?
No, I was not. The Michelin offer came in first, so I just said yes. I hadn't. We were even at the point where I was like, I don't even want to do too much research into the teams, because I'm only going to get heartbroken when the job goes to somebody else straight away. We took the Michelin job and we dived in, and my goodness gracious me, what an eclectic squad! It was the perfect long-term Football Manager save squad, because there was such a beautiful mix of incredible new gen players. And then for some reason, Rob Holding is also there. So this is the best day of my life. It's the best day of my life. Like scrolling through some of these players, a lot of Spanish players, a lot of Spanish new gens in the team. Because I think the previous manager was Spanish and had a lot of Spanish scouts. So they were bringing in a lot of really, really good quality players, mostly from like 2nd and 3rd tier Spanish clubs, but Danish, Super League quality players. We had an absolutely incredible deep lying playmaker in the team, Abubakar Abi, who was phenomenal, like Premier League quality, like absolutely incredible. Rob Holding is also there. I'm like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Also, a really, really wonderful player that I nicknamed Gengar, because his name sounded like the big spooky Pokemon. At the very, very start of the save, when I was at Odds Ball Club in Norway, he was going to be my star player, and had I not gone to Rosenborg, I think he would have eventually carried the team. Michelin had signed him about 3 years previously, so I got reunited with my boy. I was like, oh my god, you're here! Oh my god! And hugs, and we talked in that voice. It was really weird. It was something to do with the atmosphere and the pigeons. It just affected me. So it was great, and I was like, you know what, this team has got a chance. And we're about 6 or 7 games into the league at this point. Copenhagen have also already taken a pretty spectacular lead. So our, 5th proper season in the game, actually in real life, the 6th or 7th, because time differences and calendars was a whole mess of nonsense. We take that team and we hit the ground running. We make it to the champions group of the competition. And we give the best account of ourselves possible. Up until about 4 or 5 games left, it's still mathematically possible for us to have done it. We turned into one of the best teams. In terms of form, we were probably the best team in the league in the run-in that season. But we weren't quite good enough. Copenhagen did it again. They're just so strong. They are so strong in that league. The problem with Copenhagen, because they always qualify for Champions League, because in terms of the group, generally speaking, in Denmark, there's one Champions League team, and it's always them. In the save history, Copenhagen had won the league every single season since the start of the save, plus a couple previously in real life as well. So they've had years of Champions League money. They have high value players, they have high reputation players. They can afford to be paying, you know, 80 to 90,000 pounds a week for, you know, a rotation centre back. Whereas I think the highest wage I think one of my players on was nearly 20,000. It was, so it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough regardless. We finished second. We did incidentally win ourselves the Danish Cup in our first season. We went on a bit of a tear in the cup. Fortunately, Copenhagen got knocked out by a different team, which meant we didn't have to come up against them. So we went on a bit of a tear in the Danish Cup. We beat Norseland in the final, in the derby del our teams Rich could have managed. Which, interestingly enough, we managed to finish second in the league, I think 4 or 5 points behind Copenhagen, which wasn't terrible. You know, it just shows that there is the potential there. But thanks to that, we got ourselves Champions League football for our next proper season. And I'm thinking, you know what? With the quality of the players that we've got in the club, with some of these, you know, we had an absolutely fantastic Spanish left back called Alcania, like really, really, really good player. Obviously, we've got our fantastic deep lying playmaker who's just creating chances for everybody, left, right, and centre. We had a Danish new gen up front called Jensen, who, in terms of his in-game attributes, he was quite small. He was absolutely rapid and also had quite high finishing and composure. Couldn't do a huge amount else, but that's all he needed, because just the balls over the back line, he would rinse the centre-backs every single time, and he was a goal-scoring threat. We've got the basis of a really, really good team here. We've got the basis of championship contenders. And then Scandinavian football happened to me. Because as it happens, when you have high-quality players in a league like Denmark, a lot of big European clubs come sniffing around and they start putting in bids. And the second they put in a bid, it's game over. Because even if it doesn't activate a minimum release clause, that player immediately wants to go. And who can blame them? Realistically speaking, who can blame them? Abbey left straight away. He had a minimum release clause in his deal. He was interested in signing a new contract for me, but he wanted me to improve the quality of the first team, which I told him I could do, because I carried on the rich Michelin tradition of raiding Spanish second and third tier teams for their wonder kids, and had a couple coming in that weren't technically in the side yet. And until they'd signed their until they were actually physically there, he didn't think would improve the team. And between that happening, Man City activated his minimum release clause. He was gone. Alcania, my star left back, he moved to Borussia Dortmund for about 19 million pounds. A couple of my other Spanish regens moved to another one went to Dortmund for about another 15 million pounds. My club was getting picked off left, right, and centre. And the other frustrating thing about Michelin is that they want to maintain the club's financial reputation. They don't want you to go into the red in terms of the club's overall spend. So if you get a little bit too close to that, they automatically reduce your incoming transfer revenue. And they won't even entertain a conversation about giving you a slightly higher percentage of it. So we sold our star left back for 19 million pounds, and I think we got about 4.5 into our transfer budget. It's frustrating. It's not the easiest thing in the world to cope with, but cope with it we did. We were quite clever. As I say, we kept on signing Spanish new gens. Interestingly enough, and I don't know if somebody was joking in my chat about this, or if this is a legitimate bug that's apparent this year. 90%, I would say, easily 90% of the Spanish new gens that I've seen that are of any vague quality are all named Ivan. Every single one of them. They are all named Ivan. There's no other Spanish first names in existence. They are all Ivans, to the point where I think I now have 6 players called Ivan in my starting 11 at Michelin. They're just everywhere. It's incredible. I've got my goalkeeper who was already there. His name is Ivan. I signed a backup goalkeeper on a free. He's Spanish. His name is Ivan. I've got a new left back who's also Spanish. Weirdly enough, his name's Ivan. A right winger. You'll never guess what his name is.
Ivan.
It is Ivan. You've been watching the streams. His name is Ivan.
Wow.
And then, of course, my new star striker, whose name is ironically also Ivan. I keep getting scout reports coming through. Have you ever heard about this player called Ivan? I'm like, probably.
Sign him.
Yeah, just sign him. He's probably great. We've assembled a team of Ivans. I've got a really, really angry, small Colombian central defensive midfielder now, which if you've ever had a Colombian central defensive midfielder, you know that by and large their attributes lend them towards violence, which I'm a huge fan of. He picked up think in the first 7 games of his first 7 games, he picked up a yellow card in practically every single game. He got banned for a match as early as he possibly could, which I just respected. I was like, it means you're trying. And all of his yellow cards came early in the game as well. So I was like, right, find the star player, leave a mark on them, let him know you're there. And then he was really, really calm for the second portions of the game. And you know what? Our most recent season is also going very, very well. We have made it through to the Champions League proper, because winning the Danish Cup gave us Champions League entry, which was very, very exciting. We had to beat the likes of Sporting and Galatasaray to make it through, which was quite incredible. I was scared because the board objectives were make it through to the Champions League proper. I had to go through from the second round of qualifying. And when I saw the teams we're up against, I was like, it's never going to happen. But we just turned into an absolutely phenomenal cup side. Dominated the games at home and drew all of our away games. But that's all we needed to do. So we made it through to the Champions League proper. And when you make it through to the Champions League proper, money is a thing. So the board are very, very happy because suddenly we're one of the most profitable clubs in the country. The games themselves are going incredibly well. I think at the time of recording, I think I'm still undefeated in the league this season, which is quite incredible. I'm scoring lots and lots of goals. Defensively, we are quite solid. But lads, this is the most exciting thing. At the time of recording,
here we go.
I am, I think, 9 points clear of FC Copenhagen, which is a lot of points, which is an obscene amount of points. So as it stands, hypothetically speaking, it could happen this season, which terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me for 2 reasons. Firstly, because it means that for some reason I'm competent at managing in Scandinavia. I don't know how, I don't know why, but there's a degree of competence there, which I don't think anybody thought was there, which you would, which is fair based on my previous exploits on Football Manager 23. There's definitely a degree of competence there. But it's the most terrifying thing, lads. If I do it in 2 seasons, what am I going to do next? Because this idea took me months to think of.
Are we going back to Mexico, Rich?
Sure, why not? Let's go back to Mexico, because if there's one thing I'm going to need, it's going to be knocking down a few pegs. So it honestly, I'm terrified by it because it's going so well. It's following the pattern of all of my successful seasons. Bed yourself in season 1, season 2, everybody starts playing really, really well. Everyone's learnt the tactic. Everything starts going a bit too well, and you start doing bits. It's following the pattern. Now, Copenhagen are a cheat code, so there is every possibility that I lose 3 games and they make those points back up, and then we're sat here in a month's time like, I'm still there. It's in season 4 now, and I just can't beat them. But at this moment in time, this is the best chance I'm going to get. Which is scary.
I mean, it's ridiculous, like how quickly you have got through it, especially considering, with the job search and stuff like that, you found the correct club each time. I mean, even with in Norway, when you then moved to Rosenborg, that was a big call to sort of move clubs at that point, wasn't it? So, I mean, dare I say it, Rich? I don't know should I say this out loud? Are you good at the game, Rich? Rich, are you good at the game?
I was encouraging then, Callum, but come on. I mean, steady, calm.
I don't know. I mean, Kev, come on. The evidence is there for us all to see. I think he needs to enter the next playoffs. I think he's going to win the next playoffs. I think he's that good.
Wow, okay.
Ali.
Alistair, come on.
Get him in. Have you not heard his CV?
Call your boy. It's mad, isn't it? I think there is an unwritten rule. I think it's part of the contract. When you become the host of this podcast, you have a reputation for not necessarily being particularly good at the game, but over a period of time, and from spending time around the right people, it starts to rub off on you, and you start to become subtly a little bit better than people might think you maybe are. I don't know. It's probably not completely true. It's not true at all, is it? But still, it's been an experience. And Callum, you are right. You've hit the nail on the head. I've got incredibly lucky with the teams I've got to manage. There's no doubt about that. I've made the right. It's almost like it's been the rolls of the dice. They've come up in the right places.
No,
When
no,
they've
no,
been
no, 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 no.
available, I've been in the right place, right time.
Not having that one. I'm not having that one again. Here we go. We're going to rebuild Rich up. Come on. I like to do this on a weekly basis. Okay, for goodness sake, you made your own luck by winning things. You started where exactly in the Norwegian league?
Yeah, I started with odd, and then Rosenborg we did keep up on the last day of season 1. So that's
okay.
fine.
So you were at odd, and you left the job how many months in?
5.
Okay, so
it wasn't that
anything that happened after that were your choices, your decisions, your ability to bring players in, your ability to set up a system that worked, etc. And you made your own luck to be able to get to the point where you could go and challenge in Denmark. I will not have it.
Can I reaffirm my point of Rich being good at FM?
Yeah, go on then. I'll let you have that one. I think it's,
Can we have a quick chat about the network game, everyone?
No. I mean, yeah, go on then. That wasn't the right answer, was it? Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
The network game, isn't there? There's also that's also happening.
So talking about Rich being good at FM, I thought I'd bring up the FMT network game. Now, obviously, this is a network game which involves yourself, Kev, Rich, and the man who's not here today, Jebaru.
Yep.
And you were all managing teams. Kev, you're managing Fulham, of course. Jeb is managing Wolves. And Rich, you are managing Leicester. All teams, you would say. I mean, if you look at the current scape of the Premier League, not amazing football clubs. I mean, this is coming from an Everton fan. They're all better than us, probably, even though Leicester are in the Championship. But you've all taken those on. And I'm currently looking at a league table, and I'm going to read down from first position. Okay, I'm going to read down from first position. And I can tell you now, it doesn't take me very long to get to you all. And that says an awful lot about the excellence of managing. Top of the league, Liverpool. We won't talk about that for too long. Second, Man City.
I mean,
Third,
second, what are they doing?
Chelsea. Fourth, Leicester. No, I'm just gonna. Right, I have been off work for a few weeks. I'm just gonna double check I'm doing my reading correct.
Leicestershire.
Rich, what's going on? That's fourth. That's Champions League?
Yeah, I accidentally finished fourth in the league.
Whoops!
Whoopsie! Whoopsie doodle. Yeah, I accidentally finished fourth in the league. If it makes you feel any better, with about 7 games to go, in theory, I was still in the title race. And then the wheels fell off. If that helps, does that help at all?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You finished fourth in the Premier League with Leicester after 2 seasons, may I add?
Yeah.
This isn't 10 years into the game. This is after 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That's pretty good going. Talk us through your highlights. Talk us through your highlights, Rich.
It's been luck based. No, that's technically not true. Again, you say that. I think I've brought in players in that Leicester team that all have been playing significantly above their attributes. We know it's a thing in FM. We've all experienced it. We've all had players that on paper look average, but for whatever reason, they just turn up week in, week out. And I think that's been the core of my Leicester City team. It's been my midfield. It's all been down to my midfield. So I'm playing a 4-2-3-1 because I'm an awful person. And my midfield 3, my attacking midfield 3, I've been rotating between former real life Leicester players, Harvey Barnes and James Maddison, who have both been fantastic. I bought in Jesper Lundstrom from a Bundesliga club whose name now escaped me. I think it was Frankfurt. He came in as kind of a rotational option, and every game he's played, he's been man of the match. He was absolutely phenomenal. He scored goals. He was assisting. He generally played I use a shadow striker kind of behind an advanced forward in that formation. And I was popping him in there, and he was doing exactly what I wanted him to do. He was scoring. He was creating. More often than not, man of the match performances. I was using Patterson Daka, who I couldn't get a goal out of in season 1. He kind of moved like an inside forward on that left wing for some games. scored loads of goals. Midfield wise, just really, really solid in the middle. It really helps that I managed to pick up Moses Caicedo at the end of season 1. After Brighton got relegated for reasons, and he just kind of settled the midfield down. And then my centre backs, they're not the best centre backs in the game, but for whatever reason, any variation in my centre back pairings that I play, they seem to play well together. I've got Benoit Barashile. I kept hold of Soyuncu, managed to get him signed a new deal in season 1. We signed Diakabi. And also, I went again my lifelong policy of signing players from a certain club in Sheffield. Ahmed Hozic from Sheffield United, I rescued him. That's the way that I'm looking at it. I rescued him at the beginning of season 2. And he's been phenomenal. All of my players have overperformed, I think is the best way of putting it. And I honestly, Callum, I don't know why. I don't know why they did, but they managed to just, they kept it together. They won important fixtures. We dropped points against teams we shouldn't have dropped points against because, of course, we did. But I don't know. And I'm looking at the league table now myself. I don't know if we finished 4th because we were really, really good or if better teams underperformed. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of column A and there's a little bit of column B in that one. I'm not, Kev, I'm not talking myself down here, but I think it's something that has to be taken into consideration to an extent, because the teams you would expect to be up there at this point in a save, like your Spurs is, or your Arsenal. We finished above Arsenal. We finished above Newcastle, who traditionally do very, very well in these saves. There was an element of maybe they slightly underperformed, which gave us the chance we took advantage where we needed to take advantage. I think that's an argument that I'm willing to make on my own behalf there.
I think, Rich, you're forgetting a key factor of something that might make players play better. What could it possibly be? Maybe it is the manager. Maybe the manager is bringing the best out of the players. Anyway, I've had enough of you pretending you're not good at FM. Let's carry on going. Now, the weird thing about this league table is I've gone beneath 4th now, which is Arsenal, and they also have the Champions League branding next to them. And so does 6th place Newcastle. Chaps, could you fill me in? Why are there 6 teams in the Champions League? Because the last time I checked, it's usually 4.
Yeah, it takes a degree in something I haven't got a degree in to understand this one, basically. It was a weird one. It was a very weird end to the season. I mean, I think, simply put, there are teams in other European competitions that might have won it and therefore got into the Champions League next season, etc., etc. And it's a random thing. But yeah, 6 Premier League teams are in the Champions League next season. Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Leicester, Arsenal and Newcastle United. Top 6 will qualify through various competitions. Newcastle and Arsenal from different competitions, basically.
Imagine being the next club. The next club down within that group. Imagine if Kev, just for a second, if you could imagine,
I'll try.
Wait, hold on a second, Kev. You're not going to believe this.
Go on.
You were the 7th club. Oh,
there's no way.
Oh my gosh. There's no chance. There's no way.
Oh my word. Now, I'd like to query something. So I've got
Go for
Champions League. Hold on. Wouldn't Liverpool also get Champions League if they've won the league?
They have.
They have.
Yeah, so that's the 6. That's the 6 teams.
Yep.
And then Fulham, there's nothing next to Fulham. So that it would imply that there's no European qualification for Fulham.
Yeah.
Season.
Okay,
yeah.
So that is a really weird end of the season, and genuinely, as we sit here, we're going back in tomorrow for a transfer window type situation for next stream. I don't know whether I've qualified for Europe. For anybody out there, the blocks, the top 4 usually go into one color, the next couple go into another color. You know what you're aiming for. I've got the color, but there's no initials by my name. I mean, spoiler: Tottenham finished down in 10th, but they've got the Europa Conference League symbol by their name through winning stuff. Leeds are in 11th. They've got the Europa League stuff by their name, and I haven't. And I don't understand it, but we'll get to that because there's a long season to get there. Ultimately, Fulham, if you remember anybody listening into the pods and the network savers, last season, I avoided relegation with Fulham having taken them over towards the back end of last season, having been sacked at Brighton because they're a bunch of, no, I won't say it. The P word was coming out then. I just can't say it. You know, it's not right for the podcast. But they were very lovely to me, Brighton, until they weren't. And then I moved on and now we're at Fulham. So we saved them from relegation. We had a really great summer in the sense that if you're really thinking about Fulham, we already had the likes of Polina in my midfield, who's a really great asset to have. We've got a decent goalkeeper at the back. We've got the likes of Mitrovic in and around the squad as well, who's a bit of a beast and you can build a team around. But I had to build a few bits around that. And I went and got Højlund in, Rasmus Højlund, who ultimately turned into my Mitrovic replacement in my two-man strike force because I play a big man, little man type thing. So he didn't get as many games as maybe you might think because Mitrovic was excellent. But on loan, we also had Moukoko, which I was quite surprised about getting, to be honest, but he was there and he did pretty well for us in that second striker role, although he did get a bit injury prone. Here and there, he missed a few bits through injury and stuff. So that was our attacking options, and they were pretty good, backed up by a couple of other strikers in and around the squad. So we had goals in us, which I thought was decent. We also had a certain creativity, certain steel in midfield. If anybody hasn't found Harrison Reed as a central midfielder in Fulham, he's decent. As a box-to-box midfielder, he's really decent. He can do a lot for you, so check him out if you haven't already. But the star of my show in the latter part of the season, coming towards the end and trying to find a way to get into Europe, and I don't know if we did, was Solbakken on the left-hand side. Winger came in and did bits for me in the last little section of the league, scored some really key goals, was always instrumental in terms of playing well and driving us forward. Now, I might next season switch it up a little bit and I might drop one of my strikers because we only had Moukoko on loan. I don't know if I can't get him back again, and I'm not sure I can get as good as him again. So we might go to a one striker system and put somebody else in midfield just to shore us up a little bit, maybe moving forward. Whether we're in Europe or not, and I really still don't know if we are. But yeah, 38 games. We got 18 wins, 7 draws, 13 losses for 7th position. I think what Rich was saying, it's got a little bit of credence in there. The simple reality is, having lost 13 games, I don't think I would have necessarily thought I'd be in the top 7 of the Premier League. But I think other teams have underperformed a little bit in and around us here and there and taken points off each other. I had a great season with them. They exceeded every expectation. I was due like anywhere between relegation and that sort of 11th spot, I think, really. And to get in 7th was amazing. I am completely and utterly bemused by Europe. I genuinely don't know what's happening there at all, whether we get it or not. It's going to help us if we do to attract a couple of players in. But I think this time round, reshape. I think my right-hand side could do with a little bit of work. I think maybe central defence could do with a little bit of work. I've really, really struggled to find a good defensive partnership in that central defence. All 4 of my regular central defenders were on a 6'6", 6.8. I think my top was on a 6.9 average rating for the season or something. Just couldn't find them. And they're all relatively good. So I'm going to have some work to do there. But it was a brilliant season. Had a really great time with Fulham. They've exceeded expectations. Please, can somebody explain to me if I get Europe or not?
It's such a mystery. Like Kev says, at the time of recording, we're loading the save up tomorrow night to do our summer transfer window. I think it's more than feasible that Kev gets given a European spot tomorrow night. In theory, he could already have one if somebody hadn't bottled an FA Cup final against Leeds. He could have already had one.
I wasn't going to talk about it. I was going to be kind and just skirt over that one, really.
Yeah, but, I think it bears mentioning, I suppose. Kev and I had the opportunity to set up a player versus player FA Cup final.
We did.
It could have happened. Kev drew Leeds in the FA Cup semis, and I drew Liverpool. And we were, realistically speaking, we thought it was going to be a Fulham Liverpool affair, but it turned out it was a Leicester City Leeds affair.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Leeds were a weird one because half in the January transfer window, I made the incredibly informed decision to sell Kelechi Iheanacho to them because he had about 18 months left on his deal. He was still worth a fair chunk of change. He wasn't pulling up trees for me, and I managed to get about £27 million for him, which I was delighted with. And then just to throw it back in my face, he just turned into the most informed striker in the league. He took over from the obvious informed striker in any Premier League save, Dominic Solanke, who won the Golden Boot that season because, of course, he
was
did.
Ridiculous.
Dominic Solanke, honestly, it felt like, when people will, you know how Mad Scientist creates a database every single year. Used to be the way that people would just create a player and then you could just add them into your pre-existing databases. I did an experiment once when I was really, really bored with Pele, and I just somebody had made a Pele new gen, so I just stuck him into a bunch of different teams just to see how his career went. And as it turned out, he was as good on FM as he was in real life. It felt like somebody had stuck like a Mad Scientist database player in there because he was unplayable, absolutely unplayable. But Iheanacho was a very close second, which of course everybody expected. And he fired them through to an FA Cup final. Ironically, on the day, was very poor against me, which I was very, very grateful for. But yeah, we conceded I think it was like 119th minute header from a corner, which then took it to penalties, and I flapped it on penalties. So if I'd won that, Kev would have been automatically given European football as a treat, because, as I say, I think it was
me.
Exactly. But I couldn't deliver. So hopefully all the European places, as Kev said earlier, the Europa League was won by, I think Arsenal won the Europa League, and then I want to say Newcastle won the Europa Conference, which is why there are just so many Champions League places in there. So had I managed to pull it through in a domestic competition, then it could have all been different. But here we are.
And we concluded it with, obviously, Jeb isn't here to talk us through his Wolves season, but he finished in 8th, just 1 point behind Kev. The European one's a funny one, isn't it? Because that's 8 teams from England in Europe. So you would say that's probably your quota. However, because 2 of them have won competitions, could you argue it's 6 who've actually got Europe and the other 2 have got it through, winning competitions? So really, should there be? I honestly, I couldn't call it. I couldn't. My gut is saying no. I'll be honest with you. My gut is saying no, but I am intrigued to find out. Whether.
So just to clarify, I think the way it worked was one of the 2, Arsenal, Newcastle, one of them won the Champions League to stay in it, and one of them won the UEFA Cup to Europa League to get into it. Along with the 4 that get it through the league. I think that's basically how it worked.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I genuinely don't know. I mean, we've got Tottenham and Leeds in the other 2 competitions at the moment as it stands, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, whether we get it or not, ultimately it was a really interesting season. It was a fun season. I mean, from Jeb's point of view, I think he underperformed a little bit. I think he felt his team never quite reached the heights. He had some European stuff from the previous season, didn't he, Rich? I think to cope with this time round.
No,
was it this time round?
No, last season. So I think last season, Jeb finished, I want to say he finished 8th last season as well. I think it was.
He was close, I think he was really close.
Yeah.
Didn't get in.
Jeb was the first team that didn't. He was the highest ranked team in the table that didn't get Europe last season, and I finished a place below him. I think Jeb's expectations this season, he said he was going to get European football, and didn't quite get there. Jeb. It was looking very, very much like the end of our stream last Monday that Jeb wasn't going to have a job. He was on F ratings from the board. He went in and asked about a new contract. They said they weren't willing to commit. Now, this is one of the things that makes me think that maybe there are going to be European places offered out, because he went from F rating with his board, expiring contract, nothing going on, to suddenly, a couple of days later, offer the new deal, happy for them to let him stay at the club, which is what makes me think that maybe there are going to be some European places handing out moving forwards. Because I know he was frustrated, as Kev says, he was frustrated because I think his team started really, really well and then kind of underperformed tail end of the season. I think he was dropping points left, right, and centre that he shouldn't. I think he stopped scoring goals, and that was one of his biggest problems. His front line just seemed to stop firing. But he was very, very nearly out of a job. And I think he managed to sign a new contract, which is really, really good news, because we don't want to have to do a job hunt and a spin of the wheel. Again,
yeah, you don't want to do that. Trust me.
No. But this is the thing. That makes me think that maybe some European spots are going to get handed out like this. Well, there's actually not enough representation in the Europa Conference or the Europa League itself. So maybe that's what makes me think that Kevin, maybe even Jeb, are just going to get gifted some European places, because you never know. Because in terms of in terms of like the league reputation, the Premier League will be there or thereabouts, won't it? It's going to be the highest or second highest ranked competition in European football. So you never know. Come and, if you're listening to this on Patreon on Monday morning, come hang out with us on Monday night and watch it happen in real time, or don't. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, something like that. We can't.
Yeah, come and. It's honestly, I've never had a season like it. I've never been in this position where there's just been so much kind of shoulder shrugging, where nobody knows if anybody's going to get those extra places, like who they go to. It's a bonkers one.
The one thing I would say about all of this, and we'll talk about other aspects of our saves in a second when we talk about our next item on the agenda this morning, but the one thing I would say, it's a lot of fun playing with other people in this longer form. I mean, we all do drafting, for an evening. We go and draft something, and it's done in a couple of hours and then you move on. But over the course of a few weeks now, I think the three of us would all say we'd love to have been able to do this more regularly through the last few months. We've had to miss a few Monday evenings out and all that kind of stuff for just people not being available, whatever it is. That's just one of those things that happens. But when we can get together and just sit in a call we did one, I think it was a week or two ago. We did one for like 5 hours, I think it was. And I don't stream for 5 hours in any context, really. But it flew by just because we were just messing about and chatting and ribbing each other when it goes wrong and celebrating when it goes right. Or it's just a lot of fun. If you've got the opportunity with a couple of mates to do a network save, get on it, because it's a lot of fun if you can get in the call together. So yeah, I really recommend it very highly.
Very much so. Hard agree. We were chatting about this the other week when we were streaming the save. It's the first time I've properly done one, and it's arguably been one of my favorite things I've done on FM in general. I've absolutely loved it. It's been brilliant fun, and I would wholeheartedly encourage anybody to give it a go. If you've never done one before and have the capacity to do it, why not? Look, if you're struggling for ideas at the moment, because we're into August now, nearly September. FM24 is not a million miles away. If you're thinking, if you create content, you're like, I don't know what to do for the last few months, get some mates together, pick a night, do a network save. If you're just listening to this and you know some people that play the game, get in touch. Hey, let's jump on a Skype call every Tuesday night and let's do a network save for a couple of hours. It's brilliant fun. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's been, I'd say, one of my favorite things I've done this year. So, or in FM in general. So get stuck in. It's brilliant. You'll enjoy it. And hey, maybe very much like Kev and I would also say, Jeb, you heroically overachieve in these days. Heroically overachieve.
Eventually, having been sacked in the first season, if you mean.
We don't talk about that.
I don't remember that. It didn't happen. It's in season 1 wasn't canon, as it turns out, in the save. Yeah, so it was different writers. So who knows? But flip side of the coin, because I think it's important to address kind of both sides of the coin in this context. We've talked a lot, especially myself today, about overachieving. Sometimes,
look at you with your successes.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about overachieving. Good night, everybody. No, wait, hold on. There's more. There's more in the docket for today's podcast. Look, because we can talk about overachieving, how nice it is, and how warm and fuzzy it makes you feel inside. Flip side of that coin, there are saves we have all had where you feel like you are underachieving, which is a very, very different set of emotions. Kev, I know
Yes.
you were talking before we started recording about how you're having a bit of a tricky time in Italy at the moment, mate.
Yeah.
What's the diagnosis?
So I won't give you a full save update or anything because that will come in a couple of weeks' time. But basically, I got incredibly close last season to winning Serie A with Lazio on my journey home to England. I missed it by a point. We'll talk about that in more detail as we get through to a couple of weeks from now. But we're now in the following season. And I've got about 6 or 7 matches to go at the end of the Serie A season, the following season with Lazio. And having lost to Inter by a point, we went and really improved my squad. We bought a £92 million rated right-sided player into the club. My front three is utterly ridiculous in every way when they're all fit and healthy and able to play. I've got a solid foundation, enough defensively. My fullbacks are both really, really world class. I've got a decent goalkeeper. We create some chances, etc. But we're just not winning. Not regularly enough. I mean, let's put this into context. I'm still like 2nd or 3rd in Serie A with Juve hunting around me as well, but Inter are like 8 or 9 points clear of me again. And I don't think I'm going to win the league this time round necessarily. I've got one more stream to go that will finish it off in. But I've been really struggling this week. So I think it was about Wednesday, I think. I had a really bad stream in terms of results. They just didn't go my way, and it knocked us completely off course. And I'm now sitting away behind Inter. So I decided you have to try and do something about it. You can't just go, oh, well, never mind. You have to try and figure out. So what I did was I put a 2nd and 3rd tactic into my docket of tactics because I'd been working on one primarily for a long time, and it'd been working. You know, we got close last season, but this time around it wasn't quite getting me where I wanted to be. So what I've basically got is I've got the bog standard 4-3-3 formation with a defensive midfielder in the 3, and we play relatively short passing, pretty quick. We're quite nippy on it. We create chances. We achieve what we achieve. So now what I've done is I've put 2nd and 3rd tactics in, still based around the 4-3-3. So the second of the two, in terms of formation, only moves the defensive midfielder up into the central midfield line and creates a flat midfield 3. But in doing that, what we've then changed is the style of play, and we're now going much more pressing. We're trying to pin them in. My 2 wide men on the wide right and left are doing high line sort of pinning and all that kind of stuff. We're just trying to put them under a bit more pressure. But when we got the ball, we're not like chucking it and charging. We're still trying to play a bit of a game, but it's just a different style of that 4-3-3. And the 3rd one, because they're so good and they can play either wide right and left, but also centrally, those 2 wide players are essential. We're moving them in to a flat striker 3, and we are then going all at them, as much all out attack as we can, trying to bomb forward, pin them right in, cause all sorts of problems. And what I did on the Thursday stream was I started in our balanced, chilled out kind of thing. At halftime, we moved into the gegenpress style for the start of the second half. And if we needed to, we went into the 3rd one in the last 10, 15 minutes to really have a go. It did really well. It got a bit of a bounce to it, and we were picking up great results. I think we beat Juve and we beat Inter Milan, which drew us into Inter Milan again really well. And we were about 4 points behind them at one point. And then Friday came, and we used the same sort of tactical setup of going through the gears as the game goes on and trying to pin people in here and there and do stuff. And it just became really inconsistent again. Too many draws, a couple of losses here and there. We got some good wins as well, but we dropped from that like 4 points just off of Inter Milan, having played them and got the momentum, and they were struggling, and then they picked up a couple of results again and moved forward, and we just dropped again, and we're now like 8 points behind and whatever. And I'm really frustrated because I look at this Lazio squad and it's not amazing throughout. There's a couple of slight weak areas, maybe in the backup players that you'd love to be able to change. But technically speaking, they're really great. And I'm not getting the results. And I'm getting half of my chat asking the question of me, Kev, how are you not winning with this particular setup, with this group of players, with the way why is this not working? Because you should be, and I would be. And if you did this, and this, you would definitely be. And I couldn't bring myself to change half the things that they were asking me to change because it just confused what I was trying to achieve or how I thought my team played best or should play best. And I can't figure it out. And I've got to the weekend. I've got nothing that I can do to the save because I've got to wait till Monday to go back in. Really, I can't, play the save and figure it out because it's for the stream. That's when I play it. So I've got to wait till Monday to do it. But I'm really frustrated because I look at this Lazio team. I paid 175 million for my left winger, not all up front. It was like 70 million up front and loads because he's amazing. I paid 92 for my wide right because I discovered, having taken over at Lazio, we've got a sugar daddy in the club and I didn't even know we had. And he keeps giving me money, which is lovely. I think the rest of the squad is really good and I can't win. What do I do? How do I change it? How do I get past the frustration of it and not rip it all up? But even if I did rip it up, I've got the players to play this sort of setup. What would I put them in instead? Help me, boys. I'm struggling.
You, Kev, are in what I call the save ending season. Now, obviously, because you're a streamer, you are not going to end the save. But this is the exact season where when I used to play offline, I would go, you know what? I can't be bothered because you'd be so near one season. As you said, you were second and you've strengthened. You've brought in better players. You should be winning the league. And it is so frustrating from a football manager perspective when you go, right, we were near. I've made us better. Now we're still near. And like it's almost like your expectations of yourself more than in game. The only way I can sort of reflect on it with Slough at the moment is every single season so far. I'm in season 15. Because our reputation is so far on, we are have been attempt to avoid relegation every year. This season we've actually got up to avoid relegation. Good Lord. But the reality is I am overachieving so significantly every year, like so significantly, but I'm annoyed. I'm going through the same season that you're going through at the moment to a lesser extent. I'm trying to get in the playoffs and we were near getting in the playoffs last season. So I was like, right, buy this player, and we'll get in the playoffs easily. And we still might, we're in January, but I'm like, I literally said on Friday's stream, I went, I'm really not enjoying this season at all. I'm really not enjoying it. We're doing better than last year, but I'm really not enjoying it because I thought we'd do better than this. And you sort of, there's a thing I have tried to coin, which is personal morale. In game, you have your players and they have their specific, excellent, good, whatever morale. And it's green, it's orange, it's red. You as a person have your own morale in a game. And when you're playing the game, you might be up here, you might be winning loads of games, and then you start dropping off. And that's when it starts. And that's when you start making silly decisions. And that's why I have tried to create a system called Callum Ball, which is playing ugly. We work hard, we kick our players, we have big, tall brutes. We've tried to make it really ugly. I am into the second, about halfway through the second season of Callum Ball, and I've just updated to Callum Ball 6. We are on Callum Ball 6 in a year and a half of Callum Ball. Within one stream, we went through Callum Ball 4, 5, and then got to 6. Within one stream last week, just because I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed because, and the reality is, the question I was going to ask you, Kev, is what are the expectations for Lazio this season?
So basically, the expectation is what I'm achieving, which is
exactly. So that's exactly the thing, because you are not underachieving for the actual team. You're underachieving for you.
Yeah,
that's the reality, and that's why it's even more annoying, because the reality is the game's saying you should be here. And you are there, but that's not where you want to be. And it's such a funny thing, isn't it?
It's a really weird thing. Now, I don't know whether this is true or not, but this is my expectation here. I think it's purely being a streamer of the game that's done that.
Yeah.
Because my biggest thing, right, to pull the curtain back, and I'll tell you about a couple of the errors that I have made in this save because of those thought processes that you were talking about a second ago, those errors you make. But to draw the curtain back, what are we about? 8-9 weeks away from FM24, something like that. I'm still in Italy, and I've got to go through Austria. I know I've got to go through Germany. I know I've got to go through France. I know I've got to get into England and win it. And that is my quickest, simplest route. And it might not even be that if I divert again. But that's what I know. I'm desperate not to get through another FM cycle of not achieving stuff. I did a Nordic Glory Hunter last time around in FM22. There wasn't enough glory in it, boys. That's the simple reality. And that's really frustrating. It really is. And I've got this expectation that I could do this in a year and it could be amazing. And I'd reach a pinnacle somewhere and go, look at me winning it on the last day of FM23 or whatever. And it's just not going to happen. I'm going to take this into 24. I know that I am, because I'm just running out of time. And I'm so desperate for it not to be the case that I'm putting undue pressure on myself to make it something it's not. You're right. In terms of Lazio themselves, we're achieving what they want me to achieve at this point, and we're dragging ourselves towards a title challenge. The big mistakes that I've made, sometimes you'll see them as mistakes, others it's just unfortunate in a way. There's lots of ways in which you can care for the health of your squad literally through the season, in terms of being able to get them to the back end of the season still playing and all able to play physically. Because if you just play your first 11 for 38 games of a Premier League season, by about 33, they're done. And they're absolutely, totally, mugged off for the rest of it. You've got to rotate them somewhere. So in the group stages of the Champions League, which I made from getting in the top 4 last season, we played Arsenal. And I thought, I'm going to probably lose to Arsenal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my second string in, because they're a decent second string anyway. They'll give them a relatively good game. And ultimately, we'll take the loss, but we'll gain something by resting the players. We absolutely took the loss. And then it went into the next 3 games of my Serie A season that we lost the next game, and then the following match happened to be against Juve, so they beat me as well. And so 3 games later, you've now dropped all those points and you're struggling somehow. But if I'd have put my first team in, I probably still would have lost to Arsenal, probably. But would it have been the same kind of loss? I don't know. But so then my chat are basically saying, well, you shouldn't have rotated your entire 11 in, but it was a sound thought as to why I did. It just didn't work. So then later on you go, well, I'll kind of half change it in the next sort of round of Champions League stuff. And all this stuff. And then you might, win a match or something, but it tires out half your first team. So now that half of the first team that played, you can't play them in the next Serie A game. So you have to take them out. And then you lose another Serie A game because it's just round and round, those little moments where you make those choices and it either falls for you and it doesn't. And at the moment, they're not falling for me. And so it just always makes you try and play catch up and reshape and restructure and do something to try and drag yourself there, rather than just play where you are in that sense and enjoy the ride, because they're still doing well. We're 2nd or 3rd in the league. We're doing fine, but it's not where I want to be. And it's so annoying. But that's a streamer thing and not a game thing.
Yeah. You're exactly right.
How do you clear the streamer out of your mind and just play the game, or do you not?
You can't. I don't think. I think you're exactly right. I think it's that thing of you need to get it done by a certain time, and the reality is you stream 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 10 hours. If I was bored on a Sunday, I could do 10 hours.
Yeah, me too.
And so I've done a week of your progress on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And so that's I suppose where the stream element. I'm exactly the same. There's so many similarities, which is ridiculous considering I'm Slough managing in the Championship and you're Lazio trying to win the lot
with a sugar daddy.
Exactly. But like I'm in my mind, I'm like, right, okay, we're coming into September now. I need to get into the Premier League pretty soonish, because if I'm not in the Premier League pretty soonish, I'm gonna be nowhere near winning the Premier League. And it's you can't help but think that way. And there's points where sometimes, and Rich has alluded to it earlier on, there's points where your save goes too quickly from a streaming perspective, and there's also points where a stream goes too slow. And I'm a big fan of narrative. I'm a big fan of doing the journey, getting there. But there's also points where you go, right, okay, we need to win this now. This is beyond it. Right, we're not messing around anymore. I can't do another 7 seasons in the Vanarama South. I'm gonna have to get out of it now. And that is But equally, my word, it'll taste sweet when you eventually win it, Kev. I mean, that'll be a thing of beauty when you do win it, because it'll be soon.
So, I mean, the question will be, I think, it's an interesting point where we all are as streamers, YouTubers, whatever, anybody listening in might be doing with all of this content that we make. Because for the very first time, we can take our saves onwards into 24. Now, I perceive that I'm going to have to do that to finish off this save. I'm not going to bin it. I'm going to complete it, but it will take us into FM24. But I'd already got FM24 plans that I wanted to go for, and you know, brand new game, brand new save, brand new, you know, shiny new things for everybody to go, ooh, you know, it will be really interesting this time around to see, taking an old save in, what people think about that when they come in and find me for the first time because they're looking for new content, and you go, well, actually I'm in 2053 and I'm, you know, blah blah blah, and whether that will connect them to something new at the point where they're looking for it just because it's the new game, or whether they're looking for a new save to jump in on at the start. It's going to be fascinating to tell, because I think it's a brilliant thing for the normal gamers amongst us, just to be able to take their saves and carry on, and 3 FMs from now, whatever, still be in the same universe that they started, whatever that looks like and however it works. But ultimately, as a streamer, you kind of want the new game smell, don't you, really? And the new, you know, new save smell, as it were, coming into the new setup. I'm not going to get that this time around. It'll be interesting finding out how that works.
See, I'm biased towards you, Kev. Weirdly enough, it's going to shock a lot of people. Shock a lot of people to learn this. I think when it comes to, with the concept of transferring the save over to FM24, because if that's where you find yourself in a couple of months' time, where new game is out, you are still not quite home yet, carrying it on, I think there's a big difference. If your save was just, oh, I took Deportivo La Coruña back to, you know, top tier in Spain, and we've now won 17 consecutive Champions Leagues. The year is 2066. I've got a squad of, you know, I've got 25 wonder kids in my squad. I'm just going to carry that on to next year and keep winning and keep winning and keep winning and keep winning and keep winning. Sure, you do you. That's fine. If that's where you get enjoyment, that's fine. But it's not going to keep me as an audience, as a viewer of your stream, as a member of Kev's community. That's not going to keep me interested. The story and the narrative behind your save, because Callum's hit on it, it's the N word, it's the narrative. Your stream and your save has told a story so far. Everybody that tunes in to watch you 5 days a week for your slot in the afternoon, everyone that chooses to watch you is watching you because A, they really like you, and B, they are invested in the story that you are telling.
Yeah.
And if that story doesn't reach a satisfactory conclusion for you or for the audience, everyone's going to feel shortchanged. They're going to feel shortchanged, and more importantly, you're going to feel shortchanged. So you carrying on that story into FM24, if I was like, right, I'm going to go find a new streamer, FM24, United City FM, what's the situation? Right, this is what I've done. This is the save. This is how long it's taken me. This is where I've been. I'm in. I'm like, right, I'm in. I'm sold. Brilliant. What's the crack? How are we doing this? Where are we? What country are we in? Who are we managing? Like, I'm invested in that save because there's a story behind it, compared to having, oh, I've taken this club and made them really successful over 40 years. I'm just going to keep doing that. Like, cool. But that's not as interesting to me as your story. So
and
I
that's
don't think
the thing. It's going to be a really interesting thing to lean into. This is my 23 save. I am still doing it. I've got to reach a point. How do we now succeed in it? All that kind of stuff. That is going to be how you lean into it. It's just going to be really interesting discovering what impact that has around the sort of the new game bounce, because we as streamers always know that come November time, you expect a little bit of a new game bounce. You expect a few more people to come and check you out, all that kind of stuff, and see where the land lies. And hopefully you grab a few of them and they stick around, and that builds you to the next little level for the next sort of game cycle, as it were. And that's how you grow as a streamer. This is our point to grow more than any other time. It'll be fascinating to find out. I'm you know, hear me. I'm not going to bin my save. I'm going to complete my save. It might take me half of 24. Who knows where it will take me? It'll be fun finding out in a lot of ways, but it is a bit of a nervy thing just because it's the unknown of transferring that across. And it is also the really frustrating thing of, I feel like I should be better than I am somehow at times at this game. And sometimes what I find with however lovely my community is, and they are absolutely lovely, you've got a bunch of experts in your stream every day. And sometimes if they're not careful, it can make you feel like you know nothing as the person at the center of it. And you should listen to all of their ideas, even though there's 15 variants on the same thing and it will all take you in a different direction. It's very complicated. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as a conversation point, really. It's just to ask that question, what do you do? Because, I mean, my mental health is fine. I feel great about myself. I'm having a lovely Sunday morning with you guys. But I know on Monday I'm going to be an absolute mess because I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm going to probably fall short again. And it's challenging.
No, it is difficult. It's a difficult thing. And it's because I think, like you've both alluded to, it's the additional pressure on yourself, isn't it? And at the end of the day, sometimes it's just about taking a little step back and go, right, why am I doing this? What's the purpose?
Yeah.
And does it in the grand scheme of things, do the results on this game of Football Manager, is that actually going to dramatically impact what it is that I'm accomplishing or trying to accomplish in the grander scheme of things, in terms of, especially in your case, Kev, the community you are creating?
Yeah. If only there was a way, Rich, that we could close out our podcast with another opportunity to underachieve in a public forum. Is there such a thing that we could do to achieve this? Because I feel like I haven't underachieved enough this week. What are we thinking?
No, it's a mystery, isn't it? I need knocking down off my perch as well. Oh no! For the benefit of the audio listeners, Callum is waving the Football Game Company game in the camera. It's a very good game. It's It's just that I am inherently bad at it. So
it's like watching a quiz show on TV. You know all the answers, and then you go on the quiz show and you know none of the answers just because of the situation you're in. Watch the mind melt. Come on then, Callum.
I have been kind with this one.
See.
So I am hoping.
Name any player named Ivan.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping that we should be able to get this pretty quickly. I'm going to be strict on timings. I'm conscious of the length of record, so I want this to be fairly quick. So this is a topic that you both should know. So I do want fairly quick fire answers. Okay.
Right.
The question is, and to be clear, I'm going to start with Rich.
Okay.
The question is current managers in the English Premier League. Okay, so there are 20 of them. It's the current list. Okay, we've got to be fairly fast-paced. Off you go, Rich.
Maurizio Pochettino.
Bing.
Don't say Scott Parker. Don't say Scott Parker. Don't say Scott Parker. Eric Ten Hag.
Bing.
Mikel Arteta.
Bing.
Pep.
Bing.
Jurgen Klopp.
Bing.
Sean Dyche.
Bing.
Postecoglou. Emmett Spurs.
Bing.
Hodgson.
Bing.
Thomas Frank.
Bing.
Think of who we haven't had. I'm going to go with Unai Emery.
Bing.
Sean Dyche.
Already had him.
Oh no!
Kev wins it. Unbelievable scenes.
No! I completely say, it's the risk with this game, because you're like, right, think of managers. Also, listen to what your opponent is saying.
Some of the ones we didn't have: Gary O'Neill, Paul Heckingbottom, Steve Cooper, Eddie Howe, Rob Edwards, Marco Silva, Vincent Kompany, Roberto De Zerbi, and Andoni Irial. I don't know.
Yeah, I knew him.
Bournemouth.
But I could never guarantee that I know how to pronounce his second name and make it actually sound like his actual second name. But yeah.
Because that was so swift, we could squeeze the other one in because it's also not super hard.
Go on.
So, next question, starting with Kev.
Go on.
Here we go. British teams that play in a blue kit. Off we go.
Okay, Chelsea.
Correct.
Birmingham City.
Correct.
Everton.
Correct.
Look at the eyes. Look at the eyes.
Slough Town's away shirt is blue. I own one. By default. No, that doesn't get me a point at all, does it? Right. English teams that play in blue. Oh God, why can't I remember any English football teams that play in blue? Could it be a different colour?
No.
Sheffield Wednesday play in blue and white stripes? No.
I mean, you could have had Leicester, you could have had Cardiff, you could have had all sorts.
Leicester. Why didn't I say Leicester?
You play as them.
You manage
the club
Leicester.
that I manage on Football Manager. They play in blue. Okay,
There's quite
there
a
you go.
few teams. Did you say
there are
Chelsea?
so many teams because I named
Yeah,
one
so
and then just forgot.
Man City playing blue, Portsmouth
They do.
playing blue,
Yeah.
Rangers playing blue, and they're in
I
Britain.
forgot Portsmouth. Sorry, Stakey. Oh, I'm furious with myself.
Blackburn, Carlisle, Cardiff, Chesterfield, Colchester, Coventry.
Keep going.
Ipswich,
Keep going. This is making me feel so much better about myself.
Millwall, Oldham,
See,
Peterborough, Rochdale.
And the universe balances up, doesn't it? You know, he has all his success in his Scandi save. Look at me doing all the leagues. And then we come to this.
There you go.
Bet Roberto Martinez wears a lot of blue. I'm furious. Wow.
Wow.
That was resounding. Well done, Kev.
That was
Thank you.
comprehensive. That was comprehensive. I'm going to go and just hit myself with a birch, just as penance for being so bad at football trivia. Furious. A whole tree. I'm just going to do it in the park. People are going to be really cross with me. Wow. Well, after that shocking display from me, I think, lads, should we call that a podcast?
Let's, because it was really random and went off in all sorts of directions. I don't know where it might go next.
God.
So yeah, let's call it a podcast.
From exquisite jokes about pigeons to this.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was the peak.
How the mighty have fallen. Goodness gracious me. Honestly, I'm very cross with myself, and I'm going to be really cross with myself for the rest of the day over that. So, thank you, Richard's lack of football trivia. You're the real winner here, lads. It's been an absolute pleasure this afternoon. I've had a lovely time with you both.
Yeah.
Despite the last 5 minutes, I've still had a really, really nice time. Before we go though, if people would like to find you making that content or creating those communities, Callum, we'll start with you, buddy. Where can people find you? Where can they live out the last days of summer Callum?
White Callum on Twitch. We are edging towards the Premier League, and we probably won't do it, but we might do it this week. Who knows? You'll have to come along to find out. White Callum on everything. I'd also like to give a shout out to someone who you briefly mentioned there, the Steak Bake. Steak Bake's been making some really, really good content at the moment, and it would be great if you went over and followed him as well. So that was _steak_bake.
Mm-hmm. Hard agree. He's one of the good ones, is our Stakey. One of the good ones. Kev, what about you, buddy? Where would you like people to find you doing a content?
So by the time this comes out for most people on Tuesday of this week, I will have finished my season with Lazio. So come and find me at the United City FM on Twitter and Twitch, or X and Twitch, or whatever we're supposed to call it. But Twitch every weekday afternoon, 3 till 5 p.m. Come and find me, because I'll probably be in a transfer window building up for another season in Serie A, is my thought. Come and console me in that. But I'd like to give a shout out as well, actually, if I may. I'd already thought about somebody that I wanted to shout out this afternoon for us. And that is Salty B. Now, the reason I want to shout Salty B out, because I think all three of us have been on the receiving end of this at this point, and several other members of the community has. Salty B had this great little emote little thing, the FM sort of branding that he customizes for everybody. And people in the community have lovingly been calling them the FMT stones, after the infinity stones of the marble stuff. So we've got the FMT stones, and I've got one which is really lovely on my own branding and my own color. But he just decided to do it, and he's very lovely for doing it. And it's just a little thing that people can connect up to. And now we go into everybody else's streams and go, oh, look, I've got one of them as well. And it's just a great thing. So Salty B, Go and find him, whatever he's up to and whatever he's doing, because he's done some amazing stuff for the community, and he's just a nice lad too.
He's brilliant. He's so funny, Salty, as well. He's such a good streamer.
So go check him out.
Salty is just for doing that for everybody. It's wonderful. Like, to see somebody just choosing to give back to the community like that. What a guy! What a guy! I got mine yesterday afternoon, and I'm very, very happy with it. He's a good dude. We've got a lot of time for Salty to be around here. Lovely man. Thank you for the emotes. You're a good human being. As for me, speaking of good human beings, twitch.tv/RichEvans FM. There you go. That's where you can find me doing some Scandinavia. You'll see that if you listen to this on Patreon, Monday night, you'll see the transfer stream for season 3 of the network game. Streams might be a little bit more sporadic this week. Just due to basically Mrs. O, she's having a little operation on her tummy this week. So I'm going to be Dr. Rich instead, not even a doctor. Medical care personnel. I don't know.
Please don't be the doctor. Let somebody else do that, Rich.
Somebody else. I'll be observing the opera. I'm going to backseat the operation. It's going to be great. I'm just going to be there. There'll be a gallery. There might not be a gallery. I'll just be like backseating, like I'm in a really difficult Twitch chat. So I'm going to be looking after her quite a lot this week. So streams might be a bit sporadic, but I will squeeze them in where physically possible. I'd also like to do a quick little shout out at the end of pod as well, just because we've all been there when we first started streaming, first started creating content. A little shout out. He's a very, very lovely man. He's taken part. I think he actually might have won an FM versus, or he's definitely taken part in an FM versus community. New to streaming, Gitos Gaming.
Yeah,
he's new. He's Gitos, lovely fella. He's just started his content creation journey, so it's twitch.tv/Gitos Gaming. Drop him a little follow. There's nothing more exciting as a new streamer. I mean, it still pops me now, and I've been doing it for longer. Nothing more exciting than seeing just new followers pop up, getting the little notifications. It's lovely. So twitch.tv/Gitos Gaming. Drop him a little follow. I'm sure he would appreciate your time. Well, there we go. Look at us. We've done some shout outs. We've done some podcasts. My ball knowledge was impeccable as always. I think that's where we'll probably leave it with thank you, Kev. Thank you, Callum, for taking the time. Appreciate you both. And thank you, audience, for listening, for watching, however you are consuming this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the subscribe button, click the like button, leave us a little comment, just whatever.
We will do our a cappella version of the theme tune.
We will.
It's coming. Been able to get all 4 of us together to do it. So
yes,
it is coming.
We have hit the 300. It is coming when the 4 of us are available together. Oh, it's going to be beautiful. And it's all you're going to hear on my stream for months. So there's going to be a button. I'm going to press it. It's going to be very, very good, because I do have a tendency to play the FMT theme when I score goals and I dance, and it's going to be that, but it's going to be people's. Oh, so good. So good. Yes, do all the sharing, do the liking, do the listening, do the subscribing. We appreciate you. You're good people. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to another episode of Football Manager Therapy. We will see you on the next one. Take care. Love you lots. Bye-bye.